All right. Thanks for joining us for another episode of the Go Yard Podcast. Today we are joined by Kayla Braud. Kayla, thank you so much for joining us.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Excited to be talking with you guys.
Absolutely. I've dug into your story a good bit, and I'm excited to ask you some questions and have you give some good insight for the young listeners that are listening now. They're trying to get to the next level.
Yeah, I can't wait. It's going to be a good time.
Yeah, and we just said before, we appreciate you taking time. We know you probably would have a lot of other things going on in your life right now, and this would be like the heart of college softball season. And unfortunately, we're all stuck where we're at right now and trying to get back at it. So thanks for taking time kind of on short notice to join us here tonight.
Yeah, no problem. I'm excited. I mean, this is like the greatest opportunity to get to do all this stuff now that we're in a different phase of our lives right now. So this is awesome.
Yeah, definitely. We've gotten to connect with a lot of people we normally wouldn't, and Amanda last week connected us with you. So thanks to both of you. But one thing, we always like to start our podcasts with your story. And what I mean by that is like your softball story growing up. And for some girls, they got to start with T-ball because that's all it's in the area, or it was slow pitch until 8 or 10, and maybe they didn't play travel till they got to high school or whatever. Everybody's story growing up is different. So what was your softball story like growing up? And the other part of that is, the area you grew up in, because softball in Southern California is much different than softball in the Mid-Atlantic or the Midwest. So what was it like for you, and what was the culture like in the area?
Yeah, well, I actually was born into a complete baseball softball family. My parents actually met in college playing baseball and softball at Louisiana Monroe. I was growing up, my dad was my coach growing up. My grandfather, actually my mom's father, in Oregon, I'm from Eugene, Oregon, was one of the premier travel ball coaches in the area. I had an older cousin who was about 7 years older than me, and she was like my role model. I followed her around. So from the time I was like 3 or 4 years old, I mean, like, I was in the dugout. I was Batgirl for my cousin's team. So I was like a little field rat. I was watching softball from the time I was like 3 years old on. Like I said, at any point in my career, I was either coached by my dad, my grandfather, my aunt, my uncle, my cousin, my other cousin. Like, I had my mom coach me. I mean, I had so many positive softball influences in my life. Like softball, baseball, everybody in my family played, like everybody did it. So a big piece of my experience growing up was kind of talking about it was my cousin Chelsea is about 7 years older than me. And she played on a serious travel ball team when she was about 10 years old. And again, from the time I was like 3, 4, 5 years old, as she continued to grow up through her career, I mean, I was in the dugout for all our games. I just wanted to be at the field. I wanted any opportunity I could to go play. I was like the kind of kid that like, hey, Dad, can we go play football in the backyard? Can we please go play? I just wanted to always be around the game. So I had no lack of teaching. I had no lack of experience or an opportunity to go play. So that was really, from a young age, it just was how I started. And like I said, I grew up in Eugene, Oregon. At the time, Oregon was kind of like an offshoot of California. So you talk about how good Southern California and California sports were. Oregon was just starting to kind of like feel the feed off or the pressure from the like Southern California. However, we were limited, obviously weather, it's raining all the time here. So you can't really play outside that much until, April, May, June, depending on the weather. So my experience was, whatever you can do to play in those months, you did, and you fought and you played for it, and you're battling and you're trying to give yourself some kind of pride to be able to hang with those Southern California teams. And I think that was a really cool experience for me growing up, was that my grandfather had basically an organization where there was like 2 or 3 teams. He was like the head of it. My dad helped coach with him. And we made our team from Eugene, Oregon, which again wasn't in the Portland area. So we're about 2 hours south of Portland, which is like the biggest area for softball in the state. We made ourselves a premier summer ball team from the time I was like 7 years old. I think I was like playing travel 10U as like a 7-year-old, and we were going to Southern California to go play nationals. I went all over the country. I mean, you name it, we went. And I think it was really cool that my family was such a big part of growing softball in our community and being a really big factor in helping girls grow up. And even in high school, my grandpa was my head coach of my high school team. I mean, we were all about making like the Eugene area a premier softball area. And while I was growing up, we were until I was about a senior in high school.
Now, you were obviously a student of the game at a very young age because you're watching your cousin. You're surrounded by this all the time. Let's just say we got some young listeners. We got girls that are in travel ball right now. We have high school girls, wishing they had a season right now. Becoming a student of the game doesn't necessarily mean that you have to be at the game physically. But I want to talk to you about the value of watching a game being played that you're not even playing in. I know for Tyler and I growing up, we watch baseball on TV so much more now than kids watch baseball now on TV. And in this situation, there's not really anything on TV. The Korean League just started for baseball, and I watched that. It was the first live baseball game I watched today. Well, technically it was recorded. But, can you talk about the value of watching other people play and what that did for you at such a young age that really lit the fire for you?
You bring up like such an incredible point. I talk about this a lot, and I tell it to all the kids that I work with: go watch softball, go watch people swing as much as you can, whether it's a YouTube video, a game, a replay of a game now, like whatever it is, whoever you like to watch, go watch them play. I think what I recognize now that it didn't matter to me then because I wanted to watch anyway, but is that I'm a photographic learner. Like I learn best when somebody does it. Like if you show me an example physically as like a picture or a demonstration, I'm going to learn like 10 times faster than if you try and explain something or I read something. So I understood and I understand now what kind of a learner I am. And I think that is true of a lot of athletes, right? If we can like see something, we can copy it, we can bring that correlation to our bodies. And whether it's your swing, whether it's watching a situation break out where you have a decision to make with a runner on first, where do I go with the ball, you've seen it before in your head, and therefore you can have a better opportunity to do it because you've seen it. And right. Again, it's funny, like even doing lessons with girls, I'll be doing a drill with them and I'll explain a drill and they won't get it. And then I'll demonstrate one time and then boom, they have it like instantly. And I think that's one of the perfect examples is that when you're exposed to something and you see somebody do something the right way, or you see them even like walk onto the field a certain way or hold their glove a certain way, all of a sudden that triggers like a different level of understanding. And I want to be like them. I want to move my body like them. I want to hit like them, whatever it may be. Right. And you increase like your level of play like exponentially when you do that. I mean, again, I can't even stress enough, like watching the game for me changed my life. Like I was a small, scrawny kid, and I can tell you right now, I was smarter than every single girl that I played with because I'd watched so much stinking softball when I started playing. And that's just, again, a result of being around the game and being exposed to it all the time. So I am all for watch and learn, watch and learn.
Now, one thing I want to ask, because it's never easy to be a coach's kid, right? Growing up, and here you are, you're the family's kid and you've got everybody, you know what I mean? And sometimes when you're successful, well, that's just, she gets to practice all the time because her family's involved. And, there's a lot of people, girls can be catty, parents can be catty. When things don't go right and you're struggling, well, she's only doing that because she's the coach's kid, In saying that, what do you say to those young girls that maybe 10, 15, or, in that age group that maybe struggle with this at times? Because kids aren't as dumb as we think they are as parents. They hear parents yelling from the sidelines and, all these things that go along with the game, whether they're good or bad. But I'm sure you've probably ran into this in your life at some point with, your high school coach and travel. I mean, there's everywhere. It was surrounded you. You kind of never got away from that mantra probably. How did you overcome some of those per se behind the scenes conversations that people maybe had?
Yeah, I'll tell you, I'm a unique kid. So my grandpa was my high school coach. My dad was my main summer ball head coach. My mom was also my vice principal and became principal at the school that I was at. So I'm everywhere I go,
you never got a break.
I'm highest level, and I went to I'm Catholic school, private school, I was held to the highest level of accountability as a child. So I understand the level of demand and responsibility that you have as a kid of a coach or a principal or whatever it may be, as somebody of an authority position. So I think my best advice, and I think something that I learned really, really quickly, and not so much when I was little, and I don't know if it's just because I wasn't really aware, like my dad, my grandpa really coached me later in my career. My dad growing up, he just never treated me any different. So, I mean, he wasn't harder on me. He wasn't like lighter on me. He just, we had like a very strong relationship where it wasn't about, he never yelled, and that he didn't yell at anybody. So he's just an even keeled guy. Going to high school though, I learned a very important lesson. I think it was my freshman year, and there was like I'm playing with older kids, and I think one of them was like, hey, we have like really a lot of homework, we're all really tired, you should go ask your grandpa if we can like get out of practice early. And I'm like a dumb freshman, and I like go to my grandpa, I'm like, hey, I'm hearing from the team that like, you know, they're throwing me under the bus because I'm like the coach's granddaughter. And he is like, Kayla, like that's not how we do things, and I would never expect you, like you should never think that you have the opportunity to like say something because you're my granddaughter. That's not who you are. You're a freshman, you haven't earned that yet. Like, so I learned a very valuable lesson, is that there's so much responsibility, and everybody looks to you to be that person, like you have an in, but you really don't. You play and you act like one of your teammates. And I think what happens if you allow yourself to be a hard worker, if you allow yourself to be respectful of your coach, whether it's your parent or whatever, and you do all those things right, they're all going to follow you. So like I never ever asked again if we could get out of practice early, because that wasn't my job. And I'm not there to be like a bridge between the coach and the team. Like I'm part of the team. And I'm going to lead by example and be the best like example of how you do things and how you do it the right way. I'm not going to do it the wrong way just because I'm not going to ask to get out of practice early now just because like, hey, it's my grandpa, I'm going to go like talk to him. And it didn't go over well, obviously, but I think I learned a valuable lesson. Like I said, that there's just points that you understand as a coach's kid that it's okay to like make mistakes, and it's okay to fail, and it's okay to like try hard. Like you're not going to get anything handed to you, and things aren't easier because you're the coach's kid, and that's never the case. But you have this unique opportunity to be a leader because of it.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
And then Tyler and I are both dads of kids on our team. Yeah, like
Yeah.
we're coaches of players that are kids, and you know, trying to relay that stuff to my kids, like, hey, I'm not going to treat you any differently. I mean, you need to call me coach at practice.
Yeah.
You know, this is what needs to happen. And if you do something and I make you run, it's not because you're my kid. It's because you're one of the players on the team that wasn't paying attention, or whatever it was. You know, whether it was make you run, or if I point something out. You know, I'm not doing it because you're my kid. I'm pointing it out because you did it wrong, and we need to use this as a lesson.
Yeah.
You know, and yeah, but it's cool though, and any kid could be a leader on the team, and why not, you know, have your kid kind of step up and try to be that person.
Yeah. And, you know, that was always a big thing for me, is like I was super competitive as a kid, so I just wanted to win everything. So for me, you know, being a leader and all that stuff, that was kind of learned. Like I could go out and compete and work hard at practice. That was never a problem with me. But like emerging as a leader because of the situation I was in, that was something that you had to learn and develop over time, and step in and fill those shoes. So it was a really cool experience. And, you know, the one thing that I really will say that this is actually from my assistant coach at Alabama, because you guys are dads, right? Like, I think one of the coolest things and most important things that she said to me was, when you have a daughter, right, and you're a dad, she was like, I see this all the time with like players, is the kids that have really, really like supportive parents that like love you unconditionally after practice. You can like yell at them at practice. You can do all of that stuff. You can be hard on them. You can challenge them. You can teach them all that stuff. But if you unconditionally love them, no matter what they do at practice afterwards, you get like such a healthier relationship. And I think that's why my dad and my grandpa were really effective, is like they never treated me different after practice, depending on what I did. And that was why playing for Coach Murphy at Alabama was so rewarding. Was he was hard on us and he yelled, but man, like after the game, he'd like or after practice, he'd make jokes, and I'm like, you just yelled at me for 30 minutes. Like, why are you like, okay? And then it makes it okay for you to fail,
Right.
try, and do all that stuff. So that was a really cool thing. And I think that's something that all like young people and parents should know, is that like, it's just part of your life, you know?
That's a beautiful message. Thank you.
Yeah, of course.
One thing I want to ask too, real quick, because we got so much to get into here.
Yeah.
You talk about you're that leader, you're that not afraid to take charge in a way. Did you ever run into issues with other girls on the team? Because I think some girls are timid to be the leader. They're looking for somebody else to maybe say something. Please don't hit me the ball. I don't want to be the one to make the mistake. I don't want to be the one up when there's 2 outs and the bases are loaded. Like things like that come up in the game that I think those people that thrive in those moments stand out in a crowd, and those that kind of succumb to them. It's obvious in a way, just from coaching and being around the game a lot. Where did that fire come from you? Was it just from having that support system, or was it something that like you were just that damn determined because you were maybe not the biggest or the fastest or the strongest, and you were just going to overcome all the odds?
Yeah. That's a great question. I think I was a kid growing up. I was competitive as hell. Like I wanted to win everything. Like my family, like I have 3 younger siblings, and they all like joke with me about how competitive I am. And like still to this day, I was like a winner all the time. I wanted to win everything. And I think what emerged, because I was so determined to win, and there's so many competitive girls out there that want to win and want to be competitive and fight, but they don't know like how to like show that emotion or show that fire and fight. So I think for me, it came out in like trying to make sure that my teammates like felt good. Like I remember, you know, even from a young age, like, hey, we're going to win this game. Like, we're not losing. Like, and just saying little stuff like that started to, and trying to like instill confidence in my teammates, instilled actually more confidence in me probably in the long run, because I felt comfortable talking to them and saying, hey, we can do this. Hey, you actually should have gone to this play in this situation and not thrown it here. Hey, I know you just made that error, but we're going to be okay. Like, let's pick each other up. And understanding that, using like that fire and that like will to win, and instilling confidence in your teammates for it, if that makes sense. Like, I mean, like that was my whole goal in college too, was like, I knew I was a leader in college, like pretty early. And like, I had earned the respect because I did really well as a freshman. And I got a starting position right away. So I had the respect of my teammates because I did everything right on and off the field. And then what really like led to, I think really like my strongest leadership ability was to try and make sure that my teammates knew that like I had full confidence in them, not only myself, because it's easy for us that are fighters and I'm like emotional and want to win so bad to like keep all of that contained. Okay, I'm just going to worry about myself. I'm going to make sure I go 4 for 4 today. But the best way that you can like really share and like help somebody else gain the fire that you have is by making them feel confident and good about themselves. So making sure that you like turn that like interior motivation into like, hey, I'm not only going to be motivating myself because I want to beat that other pitcher so stinking bad, but I want to make sure that I believe that my teammate who's sitting behind me is also going to kick their butt. You know what I mean? So like, I think that's where it's so cool as you emerge from a fire competitive kid, a strong girl, into like a woman who's a leader that instills confidence in their teammates.
Well, let's talk about college a little bit, because
Yeah.
I want to know, how did a girl from Eugene, Oregon not get snatched up by a Pacific team? Like, how did you end up at Alabama?
Yeah. So I was in Oregon and I did not get recruited by Oregon or Oregon State, and it pissed me off, frankly. So I was recruited by Washington on the West Coast. It's Stanford. Those were the 2 Pac-12 schools that recruited me. I was recruited a little bit by Tennessee. I was recruited by Tulsa and Oklahoma, and Alabama were really like my like 5, 6 big time schools. And I was a diamond in the rough for sure. Coach Murphy at Alabama found me. We were playing in a tournament in South Dakota at a national tournament, random, and we were playing a team from Georgia, and he was watching the Georgia leadoff hitter, and like I think I went like 4 for 4, something ridiculous, and he was like, I don't know why I'm recruiting this kid from Georgia when this kid from Oregon is better. So he started recruiting me, and after the day after I committed, I got like calls from like Oregon State and hey, like,
Hey, how about that?
you know, like so weird. But it was just one of those things that I was undersized. I was small. I was playing in Eugene, Oregon, which people probably automatically thought wasn't that good at softball at the time, and was kind of overlooked by some schools, especially in the Pacific Northwest. And I was either going to go to Alabama or Washington. Washington was really high up there. I watched your guys' podcast with Danielle Laurie, which was really good the other day. But that was another school that I looked at and ended up going to Alabama because I wanted to go play somewhere different. I wanted to get out of the rain, and I wanted to go play for a football school because I love football. I love college football. So I wanted to be in the stands for that, and I wanted to go play in the sun in the spring.
Awesome.
I love it. I love it. Let's dive in a little bit before we get into like the World Series thing. I want to ask about Coach Murphy because we've watched. I shared this before on a couple of podcasts. We had Cassie Boko on, and I remember watching the video, and I shared this to our baseball team, our 8U team, and the 16U team that Dan kind of helps me with, about where he benched the senior captain and put the freshman in, and that whole thing. Because there's so much to learn in that video. I remember seeing another thing of his. Uncoachable kids become unemployed adults. I mean, this guy has his finger all over the game of softball at the collegiate level and at the Olympic level with so many athletes that have gone on to play. What does he mean to the game of softball? And what's some of the biggest takeaways you take away from him? Because watching him on ESPN and watching the way he interacts, man, he's something special. He's, in that elite class of coaches. And for those who may not know him the way you've gotten to know him, what does he mean to the game of softball and what's he meant to you?
Whew, it's going to be a tough answer because I think, again, when you talk about like why I went to Alabama, like hands down, like when he was recruiting me, I have never felt so instantly like connected to a coaching staff as I did with the Alabama coaching staff. And I think, it always starts at the top. He's the leader of that program and he has made it what it is today. And I think, oh man, I've never met somebody that has such an incredible pulse for everything. Like he knows, like he just has such an incredible sense of not only like people, like he's such a good like judge of character really, really quickly. He also like senses like energy and momentum and certain things within the softball game. So it's crazy when you meet him because he just, like he says, one of his best qualities is that like he can smell like poop from a mile away. Like he can sense like, when it's like somebody that's not going to fit into our program, he knows that really, really quickly. So I think that and his ability to connect with people on a human level is unbelievable. I mean, the way he gets the fans to buy into our program, the way he like welcomes me and he writes thank you letters all the time. Like he just has such an incredible understanding of like how like psychologically humans work, and he's able to connect with them, relate to them, and bridge the gap. And that's why he's such a good softball manager, is because I say manager, I mean, he's a head coach, but he runs so much more than just the game stuff. He understands personnel. He understands personalities. He understands what it means to grow our sport too. I mean, he talked about it. I listened to a podcast he was on today for ESPN, and he was talking about how like cool it was like that softball is like covered by ESPN and how much he appreciates that growing women's sports. But what he understands beyond that is his role in the media, his role in relationship building, his role in fan support and boosters to grow our sport and to make it better. I think like one of the most obvious things I can think of is like when Twitter first started, he was like, all right, everybody. And like Twitter's brand new. All right, we're getting a hashtag Bama SB. And we're all like, that's the stupidest thing I've ever heard. Like, why do we need to do this? He's like, put it on the end of every single tweet. Like Bama SB is like still a giant thing. Like he knew at the time when Twitter started, like how important it was for us to be like on social media and all that stuff. So I think, again, his ability to affect the softball world because he understands how the media and how publicity and how relationship building can grow the sport, especially women's sports, is huge. And then, as a player, I think that the simplest way that I can express like Murph is that I came in as like a good person and I left as like an incredible person. Like he builds your personality as much as your softball skill. I would say I'm way better person than I am a softball player after I left that program because he just instills such good, like important things that I think about all the time, important messages, mottos, that resonate with you and you carry on forever. Like he like used to say something really simple, like you surround yourself with good people, good things happen. Think about that like every other day. Like just little things like that matter, like how important it is to shake people's hand, how important it is to write a thank you note, like how important it is to understand that like the world's not all about you, and like the sooner you realize that, the better off you'll be. Like I have like 1,000 like little things that he taught me that I just think about all the time, because he understood that it's important to be a good softball player, but your message and your brand is much bigger than just the field.
It's more than just coaching skills. That's awesome.
Yes.
More than just coaching softball skills. I mean,
Yeah.
definitely life skills. That's pretty powerful.
Yeah.
I wanted to get your thoughts on this, because there's there's girls that are in 13U, 14U travel teams, or they're playing high school the first time and they're fast and they can make contact.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden coach wants them to start bunting. Coach wants them to start slapping. They're like, why? Like, they want you to be a leadoff hitter. So for you, I don't know how long you were the leadoff, but what does it take to be a leadoff hitter, and what does a leadoff hitter mean to you for a team?
Yeah. Let's see, I'm going to take you back in time. I think I started playing summer ball, like travel ball, when I was like 7 years old. And my first game, I was really nervous. So I asked my dad if I could hit second instead of first. And so he let, like, for my first tournament, I hit second. And then I think every single game from like my entire rest of my career, I hit leadoff. With the
So this is a perfect question for you.
Yeah, with the exception of probably like a few games in college where Murph wanted to change up the lineup, so I just rotated between 1 and 2, and that was probably like 15 games total. So I've been a leadoff hitter all my life, and I freaking love it. Like I want the pressure on. I know that my job is to set the table, and I know that my job is to make sure that I have a quality at bat so I can intake information and then give it back to my team if I don't make it onto first base right away. And if I do, then after I score, I'll tell them. But it's a lot of people think like, oh, you're a leadoff hitter. That's so much pressure. Like it's so much pressure. You don't have any ability to like, see the ball or hear information from your teammates or whatever it is. You have to just go in and lead and set the table. But I saw it as an opportunity to be a catalyst. You talk about like your leadership qualities and how you can affect and impact your team. Like as a leadoff, I knew I wanted to be that catalyst. I wanted to set the tone. I wanted them and my teammates to know that like, hey, this pitcher's not that good. I can hit her. Like, we're going to be fine. Like, whatever it was. So I think to be a really, really good leadoff hitter, you want to be that fearless, hungry, I am better than you. And that sounds really simple, but that's what I thought every single time I faced an opponent, whether I was or not. And then that understanding of what's my job? Like my job was to get on base, get on base, get on base, get on base. So whatever I was going to do in the box, whether it was bunt, slap, hit away, it was to give myself the best chance to be safe at first. And then I knew I was going to steal second. And then I was in scoring position for my team right away with no outs. So I think that, to put it really, really simply, it's understanding what your job is and being hungry to execute that job, not trying to be big and like you don't have to score 10 runs in your first at bat. Your job is really, really simple in nature, and that's to set the tone for the game. And you have a great ability and a great opportunity to do that, and you gotta love that. And I really did.
It's awesome.
I love it. It's no wonder you're so successful in what you do. Just that whole mentality mindset. I mean, I got done watching the Jordan thing on Sunday. I'm listening to you on Tuesday, and I'm like, man, this just makes me want to get motivated. You know what I mean? One thing I want to dive into here is take us through the Women's College World Series and what that was like, because, you guys did something that not everybody gets to do and play at that level against some of the best of the best. Only 8 teams get to do it. I think at some point that the College World Series is going to have to go to 16 because I think it's getting that deep, but that's another story. But talk us through your journey through that, because some teams had gotten there, they fell short, they came back, like UCLA just recently, and then through time that's happened. And, some teams have felt the pressure of winning back-to-back and haven't got there. But what was your journey through that like, and what was that experience like? Because it's pretty incredible.
Yeah, I think the first year we went, so I went as a sophomore and a junior in my career, so I went 2 out of 4 years. And my first year that we went, that one I honestly don't remember very much. I think I was so overwhelmed with everything in the stage that it's like hard for me to recall. And I remember, you know, you go in and you have your, you know, your pre-tournament banquets where you're kind of with the other teams, and that feels big, but you're also like in a room with your competitors. So I'm like, okay, I'm not going to talk to you because I'm about to go like compete against you on the field. I'm not that nice. But and then when you get on the field, I think there's this kind of weird fishbowl effect where you're like surrounded by more fans than you've ever been surrounded by. But for the most part, when you go to the Women's College World Series, like they're pretty neutral. Like they're fans of the sport. You have your cheering section, the like opponent's cheering section, but for the most part, it's really neutral. So you just kind of feel like you're just being like stared at the whole time. So that's kind of a new experience. As opposed to playing at like Alabama where like everybody's cheering for you, like everybody's just like golf clap. But as I kind of like worked through it, I think that what I learned my first year is that once you get rid of like the, you know, the shine of it all, and you recognize where you are and the stage really isn't that big or different, it just feels like it is. I mean, it got comfortable. And I remember the second year I was there, there felt a difference. The first year it was like, I'm not happy to be there, but like I'm taking it all in. And the second year was like, I'm on a mission, like, let's go. We're not like messing around anymore. So there was a huge transition between those 2 years, and we had a veteran team returning with an ace pitcher. And so we were really set up to be very successful. And the second year too, it was really cool because we pretty much like played as good as you can in our first like 4 or 5 games. I mean, everything was clicking. And then when we got to the finals, we played Oklahoma in 2012, and we got our butts kicked in game 1. I mean, like I remember feeling like I got like slapped across the face. I was like, what just happened? I was in left field, and it was like, oh my gosh, like I don't even know, like I don't even remember the game because it was just like went by so fast. Like Oklahoma was so stinking good. And then in game 2, we had this like very powerful like pre-game talk where we're like, okay, all of that, like now we know what it feels like, we know what it looks like, let's go out and compete. And we did. And then in game 3, I'm sure Cassie talked to you about it, was like the classic dance in the rain. We're going to come back from behind, we're going to fight adversity, fight the weather, fight all the rain delays, and we're going to be gritty, and we're going to pull a win and find a way to win. So, and we did that, and it was like the coolest experience, because I remember in that process of the rain delay, just sitting there, and like I was always told like as a kid, like take mental pictures, and I just remember standing on the field when we were like scoring and just being like, oh my gosh, this moment, it's huge. And it wasn't necessarily because like we're going to win the World Series. It was because we like dug ourselves out of a huge hole from game 1. And I saw the resilience and the fight from my team. And it just like brought me like more joy than like I could ever imagine. And then we won, and that was fantastic. So it was just a really cool like process.
I was about to say, and as for Alabama being the football school that it is and all that, Alabama likes winners, no matter what sport. Alabama just likes winners. So, I mean, what was it like to bring that back on campus? And, I mean, obviously school's kind of out at that point.
Yeah.
But what's it like? Because you're amongst the winners in Alabama history. And like I said, it doesn't matter what sport. They like winners. And if you win, you will always be remembered as a winner.
Yeah, I think it actually clicked pretty powerfully when I returned in the fall. Actually, I went to this like meeting. It was I think I was like either a guest, like they had like representatives from sports, or I guest spoke or something like that. And somebody was like, this is the golden age of Alabama, of the University of Alabama. And at the time, Alabama had won like its 2nd national championship in football, gymnastics won, tennis or golf, like a bunch of teams had just won the national championship. There was like, we won like 6 in 1 year or something ridiculous like that. And I remember sitting there and being like, wow, I'm part of not only like an incredible tradition of football, but the emergence of all of the other sports at Alabama, the emergence of the SEC conference and softball. And that's where it really clicked for me. Like, wow, what I did and what we did as a team was huge. And like you said, Alabama likes winners, and like it truly was. It's still like unmatched, like the golden age of Alabama. And it trickled down because like enrollment went up, and the Alabama University got like a huge pickup in terms of like facilities and everything in Tuscaloosa. So it just blew up. So it's cool to know that like you're a piece of that increase in building the university to even bigger and like higher heights.
Well, talk about this, because this has got to be a weird transition. So you finish your college career, you come off of that win, the next year, and you're still, I'm sure you rode that for a little while, that the emotions of that with your team. How do you make the transition from softball player to softball analyst? How did that, first of all, how did that opportunity come about?
Yeah.
Obviously, your education at Alabama worked in your favor as well. But talk about how that all came about and how that transition worked out for you.
Yeah, it's funny. So you talk about like the value of the World Series. So another piece of like amazingness about the World Series is when you go there, you work with the ESPN crews. And before the finals, we did a kind of like a little media day where we had like on our off morning or something like that, we had like, you read cue cards, we like talked to all the camera crews, like the ESPN producers were all around us. So I literally like just asked everybody what they did, and I was talking to at the time, she's my boss now, but the coordinating producer for ESPN, and I just was like, thank you so much, we really appreciate it. And like I just had like a conversation with her, like asked her what her role was, and she was talking to me, and like I didn't think anything of it. Did a good job with the interviews, did a good job with all the media stuff. And after I graduated, she called me and was like, hey, I just want to let you know, like, I thought you were really impressive at the World Series media interviews. I've talked to all your coaches. Like, I know you're a communications major. Are you interested? We're starting this thing called the SEC Network. Are you interested in being a part of it? And I was like, hell yeah, I am. So it was like super stoked on that. So my start with ESPN was literally, I wasn't trying to get a job. I never was like, hey, I'm Kayla Braud, here's my resume, I'm interested. It was just me being genuinely like, I'm taking advantage of this opportunity. Number one, I'm saying hello to everybody. I'm being respectful, shaking people's hands, telling them thank you. Again, things I learned from Coach Murphy that are expected,
Right.
and it paid off. And then again, just talking to somebody rather than thinking like it's not important. Or I remember, like, not to throw my teammates under the bus, but like they were like, oh, it sucks that you have to go do that. It's like, okay, sure. Like, and it got me a job, so it's what I want. I didn't think I wanted to do it. I kind of wanted to go on TV. I thought I wanted to go to behind the scenes and production and stuff, and then I got this opportunity. And my first year, I was basically, there was no SEC network yet. They were going to start it the year after. So my boss, Meg Aronowitz, wanted to give me the opportunity to kind of like get some experience early in my career. So I got thrown into the fire, like no training, like no advice, really, just like, hey, go call this game, just go talk about softball. So I remember my first game, I called a Florida Texas A&M game. It was important because Florida was gonna like be like trying to win an SEC championship, and they ended up winning the national championship that year, actually. So it was like a huge, like, important stuff. I was with Michelle Smith, who's like the commentator for the World Series. So it felt like huge. And I probably did terrible, but I got thrown into the fire and kind of worked my way up from there. But I will say, transitioning as a non-player to an analyst, I think what I recognized really early is that was the first time since I had stopped playing, when I get to call a game, that I felt like the same adrenaline that I got when I played. I felt like I had to prepare, I had to study, I had to learn, I had to like get dressed up, which was not what I want to wear. I'd rather wear a uniform, but like still I had to like get to physically prepare. And then there's like a 3, 2, 1, boom, we're on air. Like there's that feeling of having to perform and be on. So I think that gave me that same rush, and I'm like really grateful for it.
Awesome.
It's kind of cool. That's so great because like me and Dan,
good life lesson.
Yeah, it is, because like me and Dan started this podcast, you know what I mean? And I'd coached high school baseball for years, and it was always just a small group of kids that came in every year. And then we started this podcast, and I'm like, man, I can affect all these kids, you know what I mean? And it's one of those things that like I do get, like, we do our research and read up and reach out and communicate and all the things you're talking about. We do that for these. And I can't imagine a live audience. But one thing I want to ask is, since you started it, what's been the biggest change with college softball? Because I think like I know watching just last year with like you with the Women's College World Series up in the booth on the side kind of, and the insight and the information that came out of that was pretty valuable as a viewer watching it. But what's been the biggest change since you started with no SEC network, working SEC network, Women's College World Series work? I mean, I guess the next is getting up in that booth with like Amanda and Michelle and Jessica and all those up there. But what's been the biggest change, along the way here?
Yeah, I think, when I started, I think that from a TV perspective, I did like 5 games my first year. I think I worked like 40 days last year. So like to go from 5 days to 40 is incredible. And that's not only because of the SEC network, but just like the growth on the major networks, ESPN, ESPN2, is how much coverage that we are allowed. And then you talk about the ACC network now. So basically, I think the biggest difference for me from the time I played, especially, is like my parents used to have to watch like Game Tracker. You guys know what Game Tracker is? Looks like there's little penguins like running around, like you're like 1 out, 2 outs. And now like every single game is on TV, like every single game from Alabama, like I'm pretty sure I can watch. So I think what's awesome is that there's such a good value in like putting softball on TV. And again, when I was a freshman, like we had our super regional on, and I think that was like maybe the second time we were on TV that year. So like we were on twice, like now they're on every single time. So I think that's huge. And I think from the time that I played, if you're talking about a softball perspective, to me, the parity and the growth of softball on the East Coast, especially in the South, because of the SEC network and because of the growth of the Southeastern Conference as a softball, like has made softball youth softball in that area. And again, it's going to happen in the ACC because now Clemson has a team and Duke has a team. You're going to see more growth in our sport on the East Coast, which I think creates more parity. I think you're seeing like just more talent hotspots. Georgia's huge for softball now. Alabama's like huge for picking up recruits. So that wasn't really a thing like when I played, and how many like local kids are going to be able to play on their school teams and stuff is going to be huge for the growth of our sport. So parity and just the growth has been incredible to see.
I'm looking forward to it because we got girls that are kind of right in the perfect spot right now. They're going to be turning 12 this year, and the way that the sport is growing right now, I just can't wait. Like the more opportunities they're going to have with this, even if they don't play D1, just the sport in general is just gonna really be boosted up.
Real quick, Dad, too. One thing, like we just brought it up last week, is like softball is the number 3 sport behind football and basketball for growth. And you're talking about like there's the whole Mid-Atlantic and Northeast. I mean, short of Michigan maybe and Minnesota, there's so much growth that can still come from this game. It's incredible. And like you said, our daughters are right there in that spot that hopefully they can kind of take advantage of this momentum and wave.
Absolutely. I'm looking forward to it. I wanted to touch on this a little bit because, over the last couple of weeks, we talked about the package deal. We talked about softball school, and especially right now with the quarantine, everything's done online right now. Zoom calls, whatever it is, you want to hang out with your family and friends. A lot of people, they can only do it through Zoom calls. But right now, talk about the power of, one thing, what you've been doing with package deal. I saw you were giving some bunting lessons.
Yeah.
But I also wanted to see, like, because I know you were also doing some coaching outside of that. How powerful is that right now for the coaches that are kind of like on the fence of should I call my team and have a coaching session, or if it's a parent, should I invest in these online lessons? How powerful is that for you? And what are you looking forward to doing, whether it's with the package deal or with your own coaching?
Yeah, no, I think it's huge. I think what it does is it brings like a somewhat sense of normalcy back to like these girls' lives that have been like, I mean, everything's been taken. We talk about all the time, like we're kind of in this weird bubble, especially with me, where I'm like, okay, the college game is gone, and that dramatically affects me. But everybody's season's gone right now, like from 10-year-olds to 19-year-olds, whatever it is. Like their seasons have like really been like taken away from them as well. So I think from my experience, couple really good things have come out of the virtual lessons. Number one, I've had multiple parents text me like after the lessons and like, thank you. Like they have brought so much joy just doing something physical and getting some interaction that's like outside of their house. And that's not school. That's more fun based. That's more physical based and just something different. So I think it's really cool that I've had really positive response from not only the kids, but the parents to want to keep getting better when a lot of their resources are gone. Like I have a girl that like is hitting on her back deck with like a bow net and that's it. Like it's just really cool to see what kids are willing to do with that. The other thing that is really awesome with virtual lessons that I've always done, like as a person that does lessons, like I've always tried to add like video or elements or things like that, but a lot of time like it gets pushed to the wayside a little bit because you're so focused on being in the there and the now and trying to do class and all that stuff. So what it does is, for me, especially with like Zoom, like I record every single lesson now. I break down film for the girls, and there's so many like light bulbs that are going off for these players that they can see, oh, I am not doing what I think I'm doing. Because I feel something doesn't mean I'm doing it. Yes, I may feel like my hands are here, but they're actually down here. You know what I mean? So it's kind of a cool opportunity for the girls where there's no choice. Like, you got to sit there and watch the film now.
And they become their own best coach too, because they start picking up on it as well.
Yeah. And then, you know, trying to, in this time, like I'm trying to take advantage of the time that I have, which I normally don't. So basically what I'm trying to do is I think that my niche and what's missing a lot in our softball community is like a really knowledgeable slapper and somebody that knows and owns the short game really, really efficiently. So I'm trying to grow and reach more slappers across the country. So I'm in the process right now of trying to figure out a way that I can give lessons, give 4-week, you know, slapping programs to girls. And that's like been my big project now that we're on and off time, is trying to grow a brand and give a voice for slappers and speedy kids and outfielders that sometimes don't get the attention that they should in our game.
I would say, short of like Natasha Watley, there's like not too many. And one thing I want to ask you real quick is with the rule change kind of and these umpires, I mean, honestly, replay is great for the game, but replay makes the umpires look just as bad in the other way when they're calling people out and their foot's on the line. Like the slappers, you know, and there's a lot of talks with now, you know, it's amazing how fast softball starts talking about launch angle and all these things that you hear from the MLB. But like, do you think the game is maybe moving to a power game, or do you always think that slapping and speed will be a part of the game? Because, you know, baseball has kind of went away from bunting, small ball, move the guys over. The National League's talking about getting rid of the pitcher hitting. You know, do you see maybe that happening in softball, or do you think this is always going to be a part of it because maybe of size and stature of the women that are playing?
Yeah, I think I'm going to get on like my soapbox about this, but like I think what makes softball really, really beautiful is that it's different than baseball. Like, it's not like women's basketball and men's basketball where they're pretty much the exact same thing. I understand like the intricacies of the sport and women play differently than men. I understand all that. But really, other than the size of the ball, like everything's the same. And what makes softball beautiful and great is that it's different than baseball, and you can compare it in terms of like fundamentals. You can do a lot of the same skills, but the essence of the game is like a little bit different. You know, you have a different pitch, obviously, like you have a different parameters, you have a field that fits the size and capabilities of the female body. And so I don't want softball to like 100% turn into baseball. I think there's awesome, like we have all of this information on launch angle and power numbers and all that stuff. But I think something that I learned as a kid is that, again, I had limitations from my physical self. I'm not going to be able to hit it out of the park every single time. I'm not as strong as some of the other girls, but I knew what my skill set was. I may be smaller, but I'm faster. I may not be as strong, but I have better back control than anybody. So I want to find a way that you can reach a lot of different types of players, different body sizes, types, speeds, athleticism, because that's what makes like our game so fantastic, is the ability to hit a wide range of players. So I think with the slap rule, I think that might over time kind of ease up and won't be called as often. And I think it honestly should go back to the old rule, but just be called, because that was the problem, is that girls were like stepping on the plate instead of like being on the chalk. And if you just call it the way it is, then it's a fine rule. So I think that with time, I think it'll kind of like, again, we see like spikes and stuff when new rules get made. And then I think it'll even out and become more normal again. And I mean, you look at every single team in the World Series last year. I mean, UCLA had a couple incredible slappers that made some big time like hits for them when the game mattered. And I think that's what you get from slappers, is you get somebody that has the ability to adapt, change, be very versatile, because they can do so much, because they can move and swing and be running basically through the box. They're very, very like good adjusters. So they're not going to do the same thing as a righty does every single time they get up to the box. So I hope, for the sake of softball, that it still becomes like a very powerful and important thing. Because again, I'm not an All-American if I can't slap.
Right. No, that's well put. I love it.
Yeah.
I wanted to ask you, Kayla, we've talked about a lot of things here, but before we start winding down with our last few questions, is there anything that you wanted to touch on that maybe we didn't bring up, or maybe, some words of wisdom for those young players that are listening right now that may have been in the same situation you were in?
Yeah, no, I think that I hope that with this opportunity, something that's always been like a very important thing in like my life, and you guys can probably tell by like how excited I get when I talk about softball, is like I think softball and baseball, like it's so stinking fun, like it's so enjoyable, and I hope that during this time, like there isn't an all business approach. Like I don't need you to go out and do like 1,000 drills a day if you hate them. Like go do something that you like. Go play wiffle ball. Go like do something like make up a new game, like throwing a ball against the wall. I think it's so important not only to like love and work hard at the game, but to enjoy it and think it's fun, and to love, like it's such a rhythmic game and there's so much fun you can do with it too. So I think that one thing that a lot of kids face right now is like that typical burnout, and I don't want kids to do that. Go do fun stuff, go make games, like go play like in your backyard. Don't make it all serious all the time, and then you won't think of everything as, okay, I got to be like game ready. Okay, you can have fun, you can build up, you can work your way and enjoy the game while you can, because again, you have time now, so it shouldn't be, like I said, it shouldn't be all business, all like really specific non-fun drills. It should be fun and creative and should make you happy, because right now you need a lot of joy in your life, because like it's been rough
Yeah,
for a lot of people.
absolutely.
I think it's great you say that, because I think social media can be so toxic at times, but I think I've seen a couple things like Riley Sarton with her husband
Yeah.
out playing, and then you see Paige Halstead and her brother that we saw like Sports Center, and they're all posting all these fun things they're doing, and they're playing the game, but man, they're having so much damn fun
Yeah.
doing it that it's so intriguing and it's capturing everybody. And yeah, I think it's great you say that. One thing, and maybe you just kind of answered it a little bit, would be if you could tell your younger self anything, maybe that 10 to 15-year-old Kayla, anything different, what would you tell yourself?
Whew, this is a tough one, because like I like look back, I'm like a very like no regrets kind of person. Like I think about it, and like everything that I learned, I really appreciate. But I think the one thing that when I got to college, um, I worked a lot harder in college than I did in like high school or when I was younger. Like in high school and when I was younger, I did everything that was like necessary. Like I was always there at practice. I didn't really like go above and beyond in terms of like working. And I think when I got to college, what I saw really, really quickly is I had like this, pretty raw like athleticism and ability to play softball and a good knowledge base. And then I worked really stinking hard in college, and I got to be even better than I ever thought I could be, because I worked. I mean, I was the kind of kid, I went to practice at least an hour early every day. I always did drills. I stayed after, even to the time when I was a senior, when I was like, All-American and all that stuff. I worked. And if I could go back, I think I would have started working harder earlier. And it's not necessarily harder, but like just I loved being at the field so much. So why not go and like be at the field and do some drills, or like
Right.
focus on
Yeah.
like some skill sets a little bit more than I would have, rather than just doing what was necessary and like not being cool, but being like a hard worker. I think that would have been probably my best piece of advice.
It's excellent. Love it. What about your goals next 3 to 5 years professionally, with softball, with ESPN? What are some of your goals you have?
Yeah, I think, for me, I think this like quarantine and stuff has always like made me realize that I love coaching and I love my job as an analyst. So how can I grow both of those areas? Because I think that in my life, like I've really appreciate what I do. I appreciate that I'm passionate about something. I like appreciate that I found something that I'm good at that I love to do. I think that's pretty rare in this world. So how can I find ways to build those up and help other people find like success in softball in their life, being a mentor, being whatever it is, because I think that those are really important things that I realized. So again, from a personal standpoint and like trying to build a brand and a better platform for, again, like I said, like the short game stuff and knowing my skills and trying to bring that to a wider range of girls, not just in the Pacific Northwest, which is really what I've done in the last 4 or 5 years, but trying to reach other parts of the country. And then from a professional standpoint, trying to do, I think, more in a sense that like I have really only been calling games. Technically, this would have been my full second year of calling games because I was in the studio for so long with the SEC network. So trying to find a way to incorporate a little bit more studio, a little bit more games, and trying to grow my skill set at those, because last year it was kind of thrown into the fire with calling games all year because I had never done that before. I was only getting about one game every 2 weeks as opposed to being in the studio every weekend. So I think for me, it's how can I be a better game caller, and trying to grow to be, again, one of those people that at the end of the day is in the World Series booth in the final game, eventually.
Right.
Trying to get to where Michelle Smith and where Jess Mendoza and Amanda Scarborough are.
Excellent. Great goals.
Yes.
Yeah, no, and I'm sure with your work ethic and the way you accomplish and achieve and the growth of the game, you'll be there in no time. It's tremendous. If you could recommend anybody for us to reach out to come onto the podcast, connect story to story, or somebody who's impacted your life, who would that person be that could share their story with our listeners?
Yeah, I think there's two really cool people that come to mind. The first one is one of my teammates, and it's Haley McClenny, and she's an Olympian now. She's on the U.S. national team. But I think I've never played with someone that really, really quickly connected with in terms of competitiveness, what we were trying to do, our mindset was, and we batted 1-2 my senior year and her freshman year. And that was one of the coolest things was playing with someone that pushed me and challenged me. And she ended up surpassing me and being an Olympian and an incredible player. So I think Haley is a gem. I think she understands the game probably better than anybody and has fulfilled the goal of being patient, staying on the U.S. team, and then getting an opportunity to play in the Olympics next year, hopefully. And then the other person is my former assistant coach, Allison Habits. She is my mentor. If I need something, if I need advice on life, if I need advice, I'm going to call her. And she is one of the hardest working coaches that I've ever been around. She understands, again, personal development, player development. She will run through a wall to try and make you better. And she is we called her our angel in the outfield because she's the greatest human being you'll ever meet. So those are the two people. We were both all three of us were in the outfield because she's the outfielder and coach at Alabama. And the three of us hung out a lot together.
Excellent. Thank you for that.
Yes.
Awesome. This has been great. We appreciate your time. We've covered so much and appreciate you going so in depth into everything. For those who don't follow you, where can they follow you online, or if they want more information on what you're doing online, where can they find it at, and where can they reach out to you if they have questions?
Yeah, I'm on Twitter. I'm Kayla, my last name, Braud, Braud. It's pronounced bro. 1 on Twitter, and then on Instagram it's Kayla Bro, how you would pronounce it. And I am open to any questions that you may have. You can direct message me, and I'm going to be posting a lot more softball content in the coming weeks and months as we try and fight through this isolation time together.
Excellent. Kayla, thank you so much for coming on. I got one more question for you. We love this question just because we feel that music really brings out the person. You find out a little bit more about the person, especially when they're in the time where they need to dominate or set the table, as you had said, especially as a leadoff batter. So if you had one at bat, we'll say you normally say a professional softball game, but we'll just say hopefully when the 2021 Olympics happens, if you had one at bat in that Olympics for a leadoff, what song would you choose as your walk-up song to the plate?
Yeah, I'm going to go back to my college walk-up song that I used in my freshman and senior years in college, and it's Deliverance by Bubba Sparks. And that seems crazy. It's not a walk-up song at all, but it has this really cool guitar intro. And I needed something that mellowed me out because I was always so fired up. I needed to deep breath music. I didn't need anything. I had a couple songs early in my career that was trying to fire me up, big time, pump up songs. I think I tried AC/DC, all that kind of stuff. I didn't need that. I was already fired up enough. So I needed something that was calming and relaxing and helped me breathe as a hitter. So that was my walk-up song. And I would play that every single time.
Well, that's a good choice because it kind of takes me back a little bit because it was right after we graduated from high school, this song came out. So
yeah.
Makes me feel
interesting
a little old
choice. I
Yeah,
like
it's
it.
a good one. It's very rare, and I didn't pick it myself. Cassie Riley Bosha actually picked it for me, and because I was like, I don't even know what I want. She's like, this one's kind of cool. You might like it, and I stuck with it.
Excellent.
I
Well,
love
thank
it.
you, Kayla, so much. We look forward to watching your journey and watching you on TV, and we really look forward to meeting you in person. Maybe at the Women's College World Series sometime. That'd be
Right.
awesome.
Absolutely.
Yes,
All
thank you
right.
for your time. We really, really appreciate it. Stay healthy, and we wish you nothing but the best. And man, you get me so fired up from listening to you. Honestly, I love it. But nothing but the best.
I enjoyed every second of it. Thank you guys.
Thank you.
All right. Awesome.
That
Thank
was
you so
great.
much, Kayla.
Yeah.